Hi there.
I'm Anna.
And I'm Nix.
We are your local queers. So I think today let's talk about gender.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, so there's a prevailing idea that gender is like a light switch. You have one side, that's the male side, and one side that's the female side, and there is no in between. That is kind of outdated by the standards of modern gender science. According to gender science today, gender is way more complicated, way more wild and wacky than you would ever believe.
Yeah.
So we're going to delve into our personal views of gender, our personal genders, and then some fun and creative things to help you kind of figure out where your gender might be. I was assigned female at birth. So if we have birth as my point right here, I was assigned female. And then somewhere along the way, I discovered that my gender may not be as straightforward as simply female.
That you may not be as straightforward as you thought you were.
So instead of viewing gender as a light switch now, I view gender as a little bit more of a continuum, where we have 100% cis female, we have 100% cis male, and then we have an infinite number of points in between and off this continuum. So we could have a point somewhere here, we could have a point somewhere here, we could have a point here, here, or way over here. If I had to place my gender on this continuum, I would say my gender is somewhere about here. Not 100% cis female, but kind of more on the feminine or femme side.
Okay, so how I would view it, I tend to view gender as a little bit more wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey.
Wibbly-wobbly gender bender stuff?
Yeah, wibbly-wobbly gender bender stuff. I like that. I can't say it, but I like it. Okay, so to me, gender is just kind of like that. It's just like, I guess over here you have male, and maybe over here you have female, but let's be real, male and female are a social construct. Your life is a lie. Get over it.
Is my life a lie, though?
No, yours is not. Mine was, until I realized that I was this. So to me, gender really, the way I see it, and I think that how people more and more are starting to see it, is not necessarily even a straightforward line, binary line, but as just whatever you want it to be. And if you feel comfortable identifying with the gender that you were assigned at birth, whether that's male or female, great, fantastic, that's wonderful for you. For me personally, I like seeing it all over. I love getting up every day and going, well, what am I going to wear today? Gender, I play around with it. Considering that I'm on a low dose of tea right now, one thing I look forward to is doing fun things like growing some facial hair and then wearing a dress.
Okay, so you view your gender as kind of everything.
Everything,
all
and
inclusive.
Yet nothing. Everything and nothing, if that helps at all.
So it's kind of like the color white. It's all inclusive and also nothing.
Sure, yeah.
So if you are assigned a gender at birth, which many people are, there are lots of ways that your gender at birth can interact with your gender identity now.
Mm-hmm.
So if your gender identity now lines up with the gender you were assigned at birth, we call that cis or cisgender. A gender identity different from the one you are assigned at birth would probably mean that you might be trans or transgender. That the word trans implicates a movement. So many trans people move from presenting one way to presenting another. So sometimes the movement that trans implicates is not a visible movement or something that we can see. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's as simple as changing your conception of yourself.
Exactly, or even things like changing your name, changing your pronouns, changing your title, little things like that.
Yeah. So let's talk for a minute about different ways that that gender can show up in the world.
Okay.
We have gender identity and gender presentation. These can be similar or different. Both are valid. Gender identity is the gender that you identify as. And then gender presentation is the way that you perform gender in society. So lots of gender presentations are things that don't have to be gendered, but they still are.
Yeah.
Like wearing dresses, or having long hair, or cooking, cleaning, or working out. Things like that are given a gender even though they don't have to have one.
Exactly.
So gender presentation is more in how you interact with the world around you and what social scripts you follow. Whereas gender identity is what terms and words and thoughts you use for yourself.
Yeah, for example, my identity is, a non-binary transmasculine person. I tend to present, most of the time, masculine. Anna, how do you identify and how do you present?
My identity is non-binary demi-femme, which means that I'm kind of on the femme side of, well, I guess demi-femme would kind of be more presentation-wise. Identity would be non-binary. Presentation, I tend to present more femme.
Okay.
Femme meaning feminine. So another thing that lots of people use when they're messing around with the concept of gender is pronouns. Pronouns are the words that people use to describe you, and they are often used in a gendered way.
Yeah.
So these are probably the more common sets of pronouns that you may run into in the wild. We have she, her, and he, him, which are explicitly gendered.
Okay.
We have they, them, and sie, zir, which are less gendered. So they, them is a great pronoun to use if you're unsure of someone's gender identity. So is sie, zir, although you may run into a little confusion if people don't know what you're talking about.
Zir and other pronouns that we haven't included in this list are commonly known as neo-pronouns, neo meaning new. These are pronouns that really are just kind of coming onto the scene. Feel free to leave a comment sharing maybe your pronouns or other pronouns that you've heard that we haven't mentioned here.
My pronouns are she, her, and they, them. Either one is fine. Next.
I'm only comfortable at this point with they and them.
It's really important that you use somebody's correct pronouns when you address them.
Yes.
If you don't know someone's pronouns, it is completely fine to ask.
Yeah.
You can just say, hey, by the way, what are your pronouns? I'd really like to use your correct ones.
Yeah.
Or you can kind of sneak in, oh, I didn't quite catch your pronouns. Those are both very non-invasive ways to ask someone's pronouns. An invasive way would be saying, are you a man or a woman? Or asking what someone's genitals are.
Yeah. And never ever ask, what are your preferred pronouns? Because they, them are not my preferred pronouns. They are my pronouns.
Using someone's correct pronouns isn't an option.
Yeah.
It's a necessity.
Exactly.
One of the gender identities that we want to talk about is non-binary.
Yeah.
Non-binary is based in the root word bi, which means two. So any binary is something that boils down to two options.
Yeah.
Non-binary means that this gender identity exists outside of the male-female binary. So a non-binary is often a catch-all term for any gender identity that doesn't fall inside the male-female binary.
Exactly.
Here are some other non-binary orientations, such as agender, where someone is completely removed from the concept of gender. Gender queer, which is again a catch-all term for a gender that's just a little bit non-binary.
And gender fluid, which means you might switch. One day you might identify as, oh yeah, I'm a girl or a more feminine leaning person, and you might dress the way society would expect you to. The next day, you might might wake up and go, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm a guy today. Or anything in between. You can go, one day I'm non-binary, use ze, their pronouns, or anything in between. Just like fluid. It's just kind of whatever you are that day.
Yeah, so the concept of gender fluidity is rooted in the idea that gender doesn't have to be a fixed target.
Yeah.
It can be a moving thing that shifts from day to day.
Gender fluid can also be called gender flux.
Yeah, exactly. One way that you can show respect to people is by using honorifics for them, such as Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Here are some other honorifics that you can use.
So we have Miss, which, or Ms., depending on where you are in the states. Mux or Mix is the gender-neutral honorific. That is the one that I personally use for myself, which is actually kind of funny because my friends get a kick out of calling me Mix Nix. Didn't think that one through, but that's okay.
This channel is going to be all about science-based LGBTQ plus inclusive sex ed.
I'm going to be sharing pieces of my journey transitioning,
queer euphoria,
and LGBTQ plus theory.
Stay with us. Thanks.